Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm certain you're well aware that X is not a free speech platform, and it hasn't been since its inception, of course, certainly since Jack Dorsey had a hold of it, and it still isn't. So I want to tell you a quick little story here, and I don't want to drag on too long with this, but it is kind of interesting and certainly proves again how totalitarian that X still is. Again, not a huge fan of Elon Musk by any stretch of the imagination. I find the sort of fanboy clubs having to do with him to be a bit interesting. Again, a great deal of truth gets said on X, which is great, and a lot of it slips through. And a lot of it, of course, is allowed and reposted and shared and quoted on and commented on, etc., etc. But if you fly a little too close to the sun, apparently they don't like that. So I'm going to use myself as a quick example here, and believe me, I fully know that a lot of individuals who have shows and broadcast a number of different messages and material for individuals to listen to, that many of them, of course, complain about censorship online. I'm not complaining about it as much as I am bringing this to people's attention. That's essentially all I'm doing here. So this isn't a whine or a gripe session, because I could care less one way or another. We know what the free speech platforms are on the internet, and we know where they are not. They certainly don't exist on X, Instagram, Facebook, etc., etc. There are certain things you can say, and then, of course, others that you cannot. The only real free speech platform is Gab. That's really it. Again, individuals, of course, can block you on Gab if they don't like what you're saying, and the same thing is true with Telegram. You can pretty much put whatever you'd like on Telegram, and then, of course, if somebody doesn't like it, they can block it. Really isn't any different than most social media platforms. However, I'm going to use myself again as a quick example. Toward the end of the week, Elon Musk was kind of making a big deal, and a lot of people were commenting on the fact that he had decided to follow Alex Soros, George Soros' son, on X. And he took a screenshot of Alex Soros' X page, the front of his page, with, of course, his picture on there, and it showed that Elon was following him and whatever else. And then Elon again reposted that on his own post and basically said something to the tune of, and my apologies for not getting it word for word, but he said, "Dialogue with those we disagree with in a democracy is how we maintain a democracy," unquote. I immediately got into the comments, and I know exactly, of course, what did it and what caused my account to get nuked. But I said, we don't live in a democracy, we live in a constitutional republic. Fix your brain. I said, hanging communists is how we maintain a constitutional republic. And when I said that, and it's no exaggeration, as soon as I hit post, my account was instantly deleted. I mean, instantly. An initial window immediately came up, and it said, you have the ability to delete this post and restore your account. You have X amount of days, blah, blah, blah. I clicked on that to then delete the post. Because, again, I just started an X account. I didn't want to get another one nuked. I've had at least one destroyed beforehand. Again, just to test if it was a free speech platform, and quickly found out that it wasn't. But at the exact same time, I went to post, I went to delete the post, and then another page came up saying, sorry, you've attempted too many times to authenticate your account. And then that was it. And it's been completely blocked off. They even took it a step further. And this is where, again, it becomes totalitarian. I don't use a VPN. And I use the Safari web browser on my computer. They ended up immediately deleting my entire IP address from my actual home computer. So they didn't give me the ability to even get on X, let alone create another account, let alone file a complaint, so to speak, or even, again, attempt to even re-log in to my account. They just flat out wiped out my IP address. This is not good. Again, I didn't say anything that's wrong. There is a history that exists in the world with executing communists. Now, I'm not saying that individuals, again, in the United States should just be executed. I'm not calling for violence in that direction. Individuals should be tried by a jury of their peers, and then if found guilty, depending on the penalty, well, then that should be the penalty. Even so, again, there are clear traitors that exist in our country. I think it goes without saying that Alex Soros is one of those individuals. I don't have any direct proof other than, of course, guilt by association. He's the son of George Soros. He has endless dollars at his expense, or at his disposal, I should say, allegedly dating Huma Abedin, who's probably a spy. And either way, again, he's a disgusting human being. But no, having a dialogue with him isn't how you fix a democracy, because we don't live in a democracy. Again, every time I hear these people use the term democracy, it sends a chill down my spine. Because these individuals, again, apparently don't understand the definition of words. Elon Musk himself has been told to his face what the definition of a constitutional republic is, and the same person speaking to him again back when he was campaigning in Pennsylvania during the election, very recently, as a matter of fact, it was only a few weeks ago, he looked at Elon Musk and he said, "You got to stop saying democracy. We live in a constitutional republic." But that hasn't stopped him. He continues to use the term democracy. We do not live in a democracy. I can't say it enough, and I don't understand why so many people continue to believe that we do. It's beyond disgusting. And again, I know people are like, "Well, you said that we should hang communists, Sean, and hanging people is against their terms of service for calling for violence and inciting violence and blah, blah, blah." Look, if people don't understand someone being facetious, which clearly a computer would not pick up on facetiousness, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. But the fact that it was instantly deleted and then my IP address was wiped out, so much so that I now use a different browser altogether with a VPN. That was the only way I could get back on. In fact, I had to use a third-hand device just to get an account to get back on X. Couldn't even use my cell phone or an iPad. I had to use someone else's cell phone. I mean, imagine that. That right there again is exactly how difficult they make it for you to actually say what needs to be said, or say whatever it is that you want to say. It's absurd. Again, not harassing anybody, not making any direct suggestions, so to speak. It was just a factual statement. You cannot maintain communism in a constitutional republic and expect communists or communism to somehow, I don't know, change their ways. That's not how it works. You don't make peace with your enemy. You hold them accountable, and then you make sure that they can never do it again. That's it. So again, I'm on X. It's at real_AEFM. You're welcome to give me a follow over there. Again, I saw that other people can still see my original X account. Again, American Ed FM, at American Ed FM rather. But I cannot log in, and they're not giving me access to it. So it really doesn't matter one way or another. I was really only over there for some of the content, to download some of the content, rip the videos off of there, put them on Gab, put them in the war videos, again, bring up some stories here on the show, etc., etc. That was really the only reason that I'm on X. I'm not on there to educate people or even get in the comment section and do any real educating. It's just not the place for that, which is too bad. So I'm still on Gab, will always be on Gab, and there you have it. But that's the depths to which X will go to in order to nuke someone's account when you make one instant comment. Again, I made it directly to Elon Musk in the comment section of that post, and honest to God, it was like a bolt of lightning. Just blasted my computer, and it was instantly gone. So there you go. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. If, again, you followed me over there on X and now you've noticed that I'm not saying anything over there or whatever. It's, I have basically two accounts over there. One I can now access and the other one I can't. So there's There's that. Stupid social media games. And you're listening to a guy who was never on social media before, not before 2021. For all of these reasons. I mean, keep that in mind. These are the exact reasons why I've never been on social media and again wasn't before 2021, because I knew that you couldn't speak freely. You couldn't actually educate without a filter. So that's not real education then, is it? Again, I understand there's a difference between being polite and harassing people and threatening to kill people and all of that stuff. It's not what I was doing. I was actually just making a facetious historic comment, which happens to be true. Of course, we all know that George Patton knew that we fought the wrong enemy, and so do a number of other individuals. But yeah, you don't make peace with communists who have been trying to overthrow your government. And that's exactly what Alex Soros has been doing this entire time with his father. Make no mistake. You don't have conversations with these people. I've even played his audio on the show. He's a nitwit. When you listen to Alex Soros talk, he sounds like a high school girl who says like and you know about 1,000,000 times and then ends all his sentences with the word right. He's a complete fool. So again, these are not people we should be having dialogues with. You can't change his mind. He was born from evil into a system of evil and control. It's all he knows. It's not like you make your way on the stage at the World Economic Forum lecturing everybody about your opinions because, you actually make sense or you're part of the good guys. The people that make their way to those stages are evil on purpose. They get that invite on purpose. It's because they play those games, because they're in that club. And that club, of course, wants to kill us, which I'm going to get, of course, through that and into that in this particular episode, specifically toward the end when I talk about the difference between eugenics and dysgenics. And there is a difference between these two. You'll hear the term eugenics be used on a constant basis. As it turns out, what's happening to all of us is dysgenics. This is what we're being exposed to. So with that aside, right out of the gate here, let me mention this. I basically just have two geopolitical stories here to bring up, which I don't think is going to shock certainly this audience, and it's not going to shock really anybody. But one of the things, again, that unfortunately both sides of the political aisle in the United States, of course, have in common, by and large, is certainly their allegiance to Israel and what is going on with Israel and the Israeli government. Again, X is a place where you can go and find a great deal of this information, in particular video, and it is horrific. The bombing that continues to take place both in the Gaza Strip and what's left of it, along with Lebanon and Beirut, and the number of people that are being killed, is overwhelming. It truly is. There was a story the other day of a school being bombed, and it was completely blown to pieces, and then they brought in aid and food and a number of other things, and then they bombed that also. So again, this is what this government is doing. This is what the Jewish Israeli government is doing. Of course, we're supporting this. And then we're distracting everybody from all of this with Mike Tyson, Jake Paul boxing matches and, Donald Trump showing up to a UFC fight and, don't pay attention to the slaughters that are taking place around the world that are being funded by the moneylenders who happen to be Jewish and the people who are in league with them, but pay attention to all the bread and circus nonsense. This is a huge problem. But again, right now, even though Donald Trump is not formally in office, the one thing that both of these parties have in common in our country, again, is their allegiance to Israel. There was this story from informationliberation.com on November 15th, and it was titled, "Schumer Moves to Silence Criticism of Israel as Hate Speech with Anti-Semitism Awareness Act." See, if we are in this sort of, I guess you would call, again, I sort of said it in a previous episode, this sort of purgatory when it comes to political action or political moves that are allegedly being made here. This is the one move that unfortunately many sides seem to all agree with. Now, I understand that a lot of these individuals, again, on Donald Trump's cabinet may not be Jewish, but many of them, again, are Zionists. And unfortunately, it's been said time and time again that if you bring up Zionism, which also, by the way, that word is being fettered out there as sort of being another anti-Semitic trope, so that if you say Zionism, that in the future, that should be called hate speech. Of course, hate speech isn't a real thing either. So you're talking about a fake word to help define the use of another fake word, and then creating law in order to implement both of those things at the exact same time, so that if anybody says it, well, then there's something wrong with you. Again, I don't care if the use of those words, or even the use of just, I guess, saying the word Jew or whatever it is, that this is quote unquote political suicide for individuals. I've heard that a lot too. People will say, well, these certain individuals in these certain positions, they know who the real enemy is, but if they say Jew, or if they say Zionism, then that's political suicide for them. And the ADL will come after them, and AIPAC will come after them, and I don't know, somebody will dig up dirt on them. I mean, we even have testimony of Mossad and Mossad agents openly saying that everybody in the United States government, that when you hold these positions, they are blackmailed. That Mossad itself does deep dives on not only endless politicians and all politicians in the United States, but they go after individuals, any individuals who are seen in school board meetings or anybody criticizing them in any platform, and they look for these individuals, and then they basically create this giant dossier on all of these individuals to make sure that they only go so far and that their material is only seen so much. Now, of course, that depends on the individual and who they're planning on going after. But at the exact same time, doesn't that just prove that we're an occupied country with foreign influence that seeks to destroy the very people and institutions that exist within America that are not, Zionistic, so to speak? Sure seems like it. Anyway, getting back to this article, here's what it says, quote, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is trying to ram through the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act to silence criticism of Jews in Israel as hate speech and empower the federal government to crack down on anti-Israel protests on college campuses. Schumer is attempting to pass the bill by adding it to the so-called must-pass 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, but is drawing pushback from House Speaker Mike Johnson. Johnson already passed the bill in the House and agrees with the bill in principle, just wants it to be a standalone vote. Trashing our First Amendment on behalf of a foreign power now has bipartisan consensus, they said. This is AIPAC Tracker, where it shows that Chuck Schumer received $1,727,972 just within the last year from AIPAC. Let's see, this is from Jewish Insider. It says Johnson will reject Schumer's bid to put Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in the NDAA. He plans to reject the majority leader's proposal to add the long-stalled Anti-Semitism Awareness Act to the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, throwing the legislation back into limbo. Well, that's good. It's also unconstitutional. Because, again, there's no such thing as anti-Semitism, and anybody can criticize anybody, no matter who they are and where they are and what their belief system is, because that's the way that the Constitution was written. It says, further down here, it says the American people just voted overwhelmingly for the ostensibly free speech candidate in the 2024 election, and this is how our AIPAC-owned Congress responds. This is Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Every single time. Democrat, I am glad to see that the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act will be brought to a vote in the Senate. It says this has broad bipartisan support in the House, and it is time for the Senate to protect Jewish students and put a stop to the hate we are seeing on our college campuses, unquote. That was him on X on November 15th. It also says here that Moskowitz receives $302,550 from AIPAC. Wonderful. Now, you may recall that I've actually brought up this act on the show before, and this may be the trigger reminder here, is that this Anti-Semitism Awareness Act and this particular paperwork, and certainly the way that it was written up, openly stated that the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Bible itself would be deemed as anti-Semitic. So there's that. Again, even Matt Gaetz has come out and said, look, this is not constitutional by any stretch of the imagination, and that right there again should show people why endless individuals, of course, are going after Matt Gaetz. On the bright side, however, there is this story from Zero Hedge from just the other day. It was titled, "More Young Men Are Now Religious Than Women in the United States." It says younger generations of women are less religious than their male counterparts in the United States, according to data from the Statista Consumer Insights survey. It says among Gen Z, 67% of all males are religious, whereas 60% of females are religious. Among millennials, 74% of males are religious, whereas opposed to 66% of females are religious. Among baby boomers, 76% of males are considered religious, whereas 79% of females are considered religious. And then among Gen Xers, 74% of males are considered religious, while 75% of females among Gen Xers are considered religious. So again, it's shifted slightly. I'm sure social media has a massive impact on that. It's having more of a positive impact on men, and unfortunately more of a negative impact on women, which again is very unfortunate. We're also, of course, seeing this more specifically with the educator quote-unquote meltdowns that have been taking place. Because again, most of these meltdowns are coming from liberal females. They're not coming from conservative males, conservative females, and yes, some of them are coming from liberal males, but very few. Certainly, again, in the education business. So here's what I want to do now. I have a particular chart that I came across that I have put on my X account and on Gab. I recommend you check this out, and I even recommend that you keep this for your own records. This is one hell of a Venn diagram, and it does an excellent job at breaking down numerous aspects of the education system and why it is the way that it is and why it is specifically targeting the morals and values of both men and women, and using the media and politics and a number of other status markers, so to speak, as superficial as they are, to divide individuals and then ultimately, again, make these people brainwashed, sick, have no money, engage in illegality, swallow their own tongues, step on their own feet, and make one mistake after the other, while the entire system, again, just seeks to control them. So this right here is also truly part of Dysgenics. So let me briefly describe just kind of a general difference between eugenics and dysgenics before I get into some of this particular chart and the history of education, and again, how it seeks to control individuals. And then I'll get into some of the backup stories and most recent stories of some of these educator meltdowns and what's actually gone on with some of these people after they've been caught. Many of which you might imagine have either been fired or they're currently on paid administrative leave. What they don't know, and what the people, of course, disciplining them don't understand, is the bigger picture. So first of all, eugenics is openly designed not to hurt people, but it's designed to keep things actually as pure as humanly possible. This is not a bad thing. This has to do with keeping genes as pure as humanly possible, as healthy as humanly possible, to maintain fitness and improve fitness among individuals, in particular, again, among sexes and races of people, and then, of course, not intermingle or interbreed, because what you're doing is you're trying to maintain your system and your bloodline the way that it was intended to be. Again, people would say, well, that's racist, or that's insensitive, or so you don't like mixed race couples, or this, that, or the other. No, that's your prerogative. And if an individual, again, wants to engage in that, that's their prerogative. But eugenics specifically has to do with, again, individuals maintaining their own family trees and their own bloodlines, rather, and keeping them as healthy as humanly possible, which also, of course, involves the introduction of foods and drinks and medicines, etc., etc. And then again, it is believed, if you even view eugenics on a spectrum, eugenics can get a little bit dangerous when you have individuals telling you that if you take these particular supplements, you will somehow improve your body. Or if you take these particular foods, or you eat these particular products, or drink these particular products, that you'll somehow improve the thing, the way that your body operates naturally, that you're enhancing it in some way. As it turns out, that's not even eugenics either. That's what's called dysgenics. Dysgenics hides itself as being as attempting to sound like a positive thing when in fact it is not. You're actually, with dysgenics, you're destroying not only the bloodlines of individuals and human beings themselves and their genetics, but you're introducing endless elements into their environment that cause that degeneration of their genetic code and their genetic makeup. Something as relevant, I should say, is even this. When a country is introduced with third world immigrants, that is actually dysgenics. That's exactly what it is. We, of course, are seeing that, not only in America, but the Irish are seeing that in their country, the UK. Pick a country. Pick a European country, Canada, for example. I mean, name one. All of these individuals, Australia, I could go on and on. Every single one of them is introducing individuals who have a different genetic pattern, a completely different cultural makeup that is not the original makeup of the people who have lived there for centuries. This is referred to as dysgenics. The schooling system is a dysgenic program. Now, I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret here, and I'm rolling around in this in my head here, certainly at the risk of being repetitive. But I haven't written a book in a while, certainly in 3 years, and almost 4, as a matter of fact. And I believe that this is going to be the subject of my next book that I'm going to write. I'm coming across too much information regarding this particular subject that I think people need to know about the business of education. And as you've heard me call it, of course, the brainwashing torture system that is education. Education is a dysgenics program. Certainly American education, but it is worldwide a dysgenics program. And the institutionalized angle and control and government control of education is dysgenics. So I've already put a title together. I'm starting to put a table of contents together, and I'm already starting to gather references. But this is also a book that, in my opinion, has not been analyzed or written down, certainly in recent time, when it comes to the business of education, which is why I sort of feel the need to put together a book like this. Again, Alex Newman hasn't written a book like this. Pete Hegseth hasn't done that either. And Chris Rufo and these other individuals that are, again, criticizing the education business, and rightfully so, but they're also, of course, not diving into the satanic Jewish control of the entire thing and how it really is, again, a dysgenics program. It is designed to break people. It's designed to destroy families. It's designed to destroy individuals and then groups. Take, for example, this. And I can't tell you when the book is going to come out. I've hardly even started writing it. So, don't hold your breath, but I'll put it together eventually. Either way, take, for example, the old stories that we've all heard, and I'm certain many people have experienced it themselves, where parents will send a child off to college, and then they get back a product that is not the child that they sent out to college. That's called dysgenics. That is a spoke in the wheel of dysgenics. Again, what they are hearing, what they are seeing, what they're being exposed to, the conflict, the unnecessary conflict, and the way that they're talked to within these environments. Even if they come from a strong, morally sound family, unfortunately, the system of college and university settings, albeit largely Jewish and Marxist and communist, that all of that is too much for the individual mind to handle. So they have a decision to make. They either join them in their ideology as a student, or the student, again, becomes firmer in their resolve, closer to Christ, and then they fight off the dysgenics as much as they can. Still doesn't mean they're not going to be the victim of it. They most certainly are. And we see that in a number of different, again, whether it be their attitude or the way that they dress, or where they put their emphasis on particular subjects, or they stop paying attention to things that they used to pay attention to that were actually important, but now they deem them to be not important. They can't hold a serious conversation for any length of time. They don't read nonfiction books and then critically think about those books and then what's gone on in the past and what's happening now. The destruction of the mind and the laziness of the mind is also dysgenics. So let me get into this chart here before, again, I start to bring up some of these meltdown stories. Again, this chart is fantastic. Whoever put it together, kudos to you. But here's what it says at the very top. And again, you're going to have to imagine this, or you can look this up again on my Gab and X account, and you'll see what I'm talking about, and you can follow along. But it's a Venn diagram, and we know what those look like. Again, you've got arrows pointing to particular boxes, and then those are pointing to other boxes, and it works its way all the way down. And you're going to recognize this because you're smart people. At the very top of this chart, it says, quote, in a large box at the top, it says, Jewish intellectuals, quote unquote, fueled by the resentment toward Europe and Christianity, create the Frankfurt School with the intention of destroying Western culture to bring down capitalism and create a Marxist revolution. And then it says, i.e. useful idiots. So they have to create useful idiots. They have to create brainwashed individuals to just go along to get along. We'll pay them enough to keep them interested, to enslave them, so that they'll continue to push whatever ideologies are being thrust upon them, and then they'll force all of the people below them to do them, or else, of course, there are consequences. So they would lead people to believe. This came from not just the Weimar Republic, which of course was in place before Adolf Hitler that he got rid of, thank God. And then, of course, unfortunately, it came from the Soviet Union. So the Weimar Republic, it says here in this chart, spawned intellectuals, which created the Frankfurt School. And then on the other side, it says the Soviet Union created the KGB, which financed the Frankfurt School and everything in it. The people, the books, the ideologies, the media, you name it. That works its way down to, which ultimately takes over, it says, social science faculties. Now this is where it shoots off into two separate directions and starts to get a little confusing. But first, let me just read through this one section that shoots off all the way to the left, and then it dead ends. Social science faculties undergo a positivist crisis, which ultimately replaces, according to this, the scientific method. We, of course, have seen that over the last 4 years plus, have we not? Don't worry, just do what we say, do what we say, do what we say, and then that takes over any individualized thinking or certainly the scientific method. So this is all, again, coming from these social science faculties. And then it works its way again by replacing the scientific method with critical theory. And then critical theory aids relativism and it spawns political correctness. Both terrible. Relativism attacks common sense and empiricism, and political correctness attacks taboo research, which is, of course, political correctness is similar to newspeak. which is what they say here. And then not only, again, does political correctness attack taboo research, such as, for example, biological differences or even racial differences, or, for example, sex differences. They, of course, would use the word gender. That right there is where that entire attack takes place. So this dead ends then by leaning into what they say here, which is do not trust common sense and empiric evidence. Intellectuals, quote unquote, know better. They are scientists, quote unquote, even though they never followed and attacked the scientific method. After all, they're useful idiots. So again, you can see how that spider webs all the way down, certainly with what we've seen over the last 4 years. Getting back to where it says social science faculties, that of course models progressivism. Progressivism is pushed by mass media, corporations who control the mass media, and then international banks, which fund corporations. Now remember those two very quickly. Remember international banks and corporations, because I'm going to go down this chart, I'm going to hang a right, and then it all comes back up to international banks and corporations, and then it becomes this cycle of abuse. And again, this generational cycle, which is still in place today. So from progressivism does what? According to this, which they're 100% right, it attacks traditions. Traditions then spreads off into 4 separate sections: religion, family, nation, and property. Regarding religion, it says as in chastity and marriage, chastity causing single parenthood causing broken families, and then marriage causing high rates of divorce causing broken families causing crime, and then that again, you take mass immigration, that leads into crime also. On the family block from traditions, that leads to, of course, marriage and then gender roles. Marriage causes, again, high rates of divorce, according to them, in this giant Dysgenics program. And then family and gender roles lead to low birth rates, cause low birth rates, being the excuse for mass immigration. Now, you may recall this too, when I went over the documents on this show about the Great Replacement, which is, again, not a theory, it's UN documentation. In that documentation, they very specifically and repetitively bring up mass immigration as being the solution to a low birth rate. So, their rationalization or their solution again for a low birth rate is, well, we have to bring in more people from other countries, because if we don't, then there won't be anybody to maintain the workplace or the systems or the operating functions of said country, regardless of how large or small that country is. That this is our only solution. The only solution is we have to bring in more brown people in these predominant white countries to take over jobs because, well, white people aren't having as many children these days. This is, again, their so-called answer to this problem. But as this chart clearly points out, that leads to more crime. That leads to more broken families, single parenthood, and then all the way up in the destruction of religion, family, and then, of course, your nation and property. It also says that mass immigration causes the installation of affirmative action, which we've seen that with all of the DEI programs and all the social emotional learning stuff. This, of course, leads to cheap labor, which shoots right back up into the international banking and the corporations. Now, when it comes to property, it states that they're using property to create a welfare state. Well, what does that cause? It causes welfare cliffs. It causes budget deficits. It causes social security crisis, which of course leans back on mass immigration also. And a budget deficit then leads to printing money, raising taxes, inflation, and shrinking the middle class. Now, once you hit cheap labor, As stated earlier, of course, being a cause of both gender roles and mass immigration and taking in debt, both of those shoot up to a box that is right below corporations and international banks. And it says the following: conditions like dysgenics, poverty, and lack of social cohesion reduce the ability of the population to revert the situation. It is a self-perpetuating system. The system is aided at all levels by political corruption and useful idiots. And then in parentheses it says, logical result of capitalism is a goal instead of capitalism as a tool. And then that leads back up into international banking and corporations, which then control the mass media, which then push progressivism, and then attacking, again, traditions, religion, family, nation, property. And then at the very bottom here, it says resulting in what? Lacking community trust, number 1, poverty, number 2, and dysgenics, number 3. It says democracy may be blamed, but the real problem is the representative system. Had immigration been subjected to a democratic vote, it would have been halted in all Western nations decades ago. Even if such vote was carried out today, immigration would be halted, unquote. And that's 100% true. Allowing the American people or any citizens of any country to have on a ballot, once and for all, do you want to halt permanently all immigration and stop it dead in its tracks? The vast majority of every country would say yes. African countries don't want foreigners. They don't want them. Try going over there, watch what happens. Most countries, certainly even European countries, don't want it. Because again, this is how you destroy religion, family, a nation, and property. Is you don't put that issue on the ballot because that issue is the thing destroying religion, family, nation, and property. Now, with immigration aside for a second, again in the Dysgenics program, look at the medical system. The medical system has used useful idiots within the medical system to not learn the truth, follow the leader, follow orders, do what they're told, not cause anybody to read or engage in critical thinking whatsoever. It's read a computer, do what the computer says, then give it to your so-called patient. If your patient is sick, give them this. Don't ask what made them sick. Don't tell them to change their lifestyle, improve their diet, stop drinking, stop smoking, stop, doing this and doing that, exercise, etc., etc. If they did that, that would be called eugenics, which is a good thing. Again, look at the word usage that gets used in our society. You have people calling it a democracy instead of calling it a constitutional republic, which is what it is. You have people using the term eugenics as a bad word, when in fact eugenics is a good word. Dysgenics is what we're actually all experiencing. Even the supplement game is dysgenics. Supplement, supplement, supplement. Eat these plastics, eat these synthetics, trust us, you'll get healthier. This is going to maintain your DNA and keep you healthy and keep you clean and keep you detoxified, etc., etc., etc. All of that is actually dysgenics. Now take injections, for example, quote-unquote vaccinations. This, too, is a dysgenics program. It is not a eugenics program. Vaccination does not improve DNA. It does not improve your bloodline. It does not improve your genetics, nor does it maintain it. It destroys it. But of course, again, like the medical industry and even the education business, which I'll describe numerous examples of that also as being a part of the Dysgenics program, is that right there requires endless people to believe a fairy tale and then run with that fairy tale in all avenues of their life and then tell endless people. And then again, as it's been stated numerous times, all you have to do is tell a lie for about a month or two, and then endless people will just blindly believe it without even asking any questions as to whether or not the thing that they're hearing is actually truthful or it isn't. This again requires a population to be so pacified and actually ill in the first place to where they're more likely to just believe what they hear and just, again, react to it any which way, certainly in a negative way, or again, accept it as being a pseudo-positive method of maintaining their health. Of course, the whole preventative method, so to speak, is used when it comes to the business of vaccination, that it's a preventative move or something that they claim exists. Over the last 4 years, this has been the COVID vaccination bioweapon rollout. And, of course, the genocide that's happened as a result of all of that, not to mention the lingering chronic health issues that people have, which will lead to their ultimate death eventually, and speeding up that program. That is dysgenics. You're telling them that something exists when it doesn't. You're using the mass media corporations and the funding from the Jewish moneylenders to push all of that messaging. They blindly believe it. And then that leads to them, of course, reacting to it in mass and doing the exact same thing that they were told to do, which is now perceived as being a preventative method, which involves injecting yourself multiple times, I might add, in the span of 1 year, with something where, again, as you've heard me say, and as you know, these individuals don't even know the ingredients of the things that they injected into themselves, let alone the fact that COVID doesn't even exist. But see, herein lies the problem with that too. Ask yourself how many people you hear or read or see on the so-called, again, truth side of things. I'm using huge finger quotes, truth side of things, in the so-called alternative media, more finger quotes, who still use the term COVID, like COVID exists. See, these individuals are also the useful idiots because they're perpetuating the Dysgenics program. Because even perpetuating that lie of COVID still being a virus or a thing, that causes individuals to lean on other answers that are not really the full-blown truth. There is no COVID. There were 5G towers and a biological weapon that was introduced into flu shots, hepatitis shots, and other shots in 2019 that were highly transmissible through electromagnetism, i.e. shedding. That's what's caused the illness. That's what's caused the symptoms. That's still happening today because people are still taking these biological weapons, believing that they are a preventative medicine. So yes, dysgenics requires the belief of lies, but it also requires brainwashing, literal brainwashing, on a mass and institutional level, which means, again, you need these institutions to perpetuate this brainwashing. Introduction, the education system, quote unquote. You need this also, hence all of the political meltdowns that you saw. What are we going to do now that Donald Trump's in office? Oh God, our world is falling apart. I need to get on social media and do this and say this and let my opinions be known. Better yet, if I'm running a school building, I need to put out a memo to all of the people who work in this school building to let them know how I feel about said thing, even though the thing that they think that they are supporting or not supporting is not actually that thing. And their perception of it is not accurate, but completely altered because it's being pushed by that altered view of their perceived reality is being pushed by the Jewish bankers, the corporations, and the media, and all of the word usage that gets used. Again, if I hear the terms misinformation and disinformation one more time, I'm going to blow a gasket. It's being used so frequently among the useful idiots in politics. And then, of course, because the people below them, so to speak, in society don't know that those terms never used to exist 6 years ago, which means where did they come from? Well, they came from progressivism. They came out of this media corporate, again, Jewish moneylender apparatus that funds the words and the usage, rather, of those words. I mean, every time that you hear those words, you can count on the people using them getting a check in the mail. Just hear cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching every single time that misinformation and disinformation are used in human vernacular. They're quite literally getting paid to say them. Or it's in a memo. Openly say this. Make sure and work these words into your dialogue here today and into your debate. It's done on purpose. It's done for brainwashing, i.e. dysgenics, destroying your genetics, destroying human beings. Again, this is satanic, this is Jewish, it's Zionistic, and it's a problem. It's the problem. I mean, again, those very individuals and the media apparatus not talking about, for example, the slaughter taking place in the Middle East, well, that's dysgenics. If a real slaughter is taking place as blunt as a bomb dropping on a kid's head and killing Olympians, which is something that's happening over there also, Lebanese Olympian. I saw a video of a Lebanese female sports player. I forget the sport that she played, but there she is, writhing on the ground from shrapnel from a bomb that lands near her, and she's dead. So I believe she was a soccer player, actually, because in the post it was talking about FIFA and whether or not FIFA was going to come out with a statement. And, what's the international court going to say about this? And what are governments going to say about this? Now they're killing Olympic athletes. It's dysgenics. That's what all of this is. But when it's that blunt, the media doesn't even talk about it because they don't have to. They're already dead. The media's job is to get people to destroy themselves and the people around them slowly. Now, yes, in the last 4 years with the shot taking, the panic that they created was designed to get them to destroy themselves rather quickly. It's not as fast as a bomb landing on your head, but it's close. Wear a mask, stand on the sticker, stay 6 feet apart, 666, satanic ritual, no proof behind any of it being actually scientific. And then, of course, take shots. And for the first time ever in your entire life, take multiple shots of the same thing in the span of just a year, maybe 4 to 6 months apart. Never before has that ever happened. And again, I know that you know this, and I know I've said it a million times on the show, but again, that's how blunt dysgenics can be. But it can also be slow and progressive, hence the word progressive control of the government over the people in the education system. Let me give you an example. This is a local example. A couple of weeks ago, I believe on November 6th or November 8th, one of those two, there were 2 high school students in the local middle school where I lived who were selling dope, or one was going to sell a bag of marijuana to the other. As the story goes and as the police report reads, one of those students openly stated, the one who was doing the selling, because the dope was found in a fanny pack. And the fanny pack was exchanged to another student, that a police officer witnessed this exchange. When the police officer was talking to these 2 students and telling them to go to class, and the one with the dope, who was trying to sell the dope to the other kid, told the police officer that he needed to call his parent and whatever else. So before going to the main office to call his parent, he handed off the dope allegedly to the other student, and then that's when, again, the police officer became suspicious. Why are you giving them a bag like that? That seems weird. And then they smelled dope in the bag, so on and so on. As the police report reads, which has been made public, the student with the dope who handed off the fanny pack of dope to the other student claims that one of their teachers, female teachers, gave them the fanny pack to cover up the smell of the dope. Therefore, the implication or the assumption is that the female teacher knew that the student had dope, but didn't turn the student in for having dope, but instead went along with the covering up of the illegal possession of marijuana. This is in that chart that I just described. This is part of the Dysgenics program, is you make excuses for illegal behavior by, again, wearing away at traditions, getting rid of critical thinking, which of course is led by progressivism. This is also, again, Dysgenics. This is part of it, that you normalize this kind of behavior. For example, I don't know this to be true or not because I don't know the names of the students involved, but let's pretend that the female student is white and a liberal, and let's pretend that the two students, or at least the one with the dope, was black. If that was the case, then the liberal female, certainly stereotypically from a dysgenics and progressive outlook on things, and a liberal progressive outlook on things, they would be trying to make excuses for the black student and not want to get the black student in trouble because, quote unquote, black students are always in trouble. Which means we can't highlight the fact that another black student got caught with drugs in school. Again, I don't know the colors of these people or the races of these people. I'm simply saying that that is a thing. That scenario of that liberal race apologist aspect, certainly when it comes to illegality, is an actual thing. Now here's where, again, this gets even more complicated, certainly using the useful idiot in the Dysgenics program and the breakdown of human beings and the breakdown of institutions and the breakdown of common sense. There was a recording then that took place in a meeting among the local board members here where openly in this meeting, the board president, when approached with this subject and told about this subject, the board president openly dismissed one of the other board members' concerns with this issue and why parents were not told. And she openly says in this recording, well, we're not going to talk about that. That doesn't matter. That's not important and blah, blah, blah. So the district is cherry-picking particular issues to tell parents about, but not other parents. And the irony of this is that weeks after that arrest took place and those two students were arrested for dope possession, here this past Friday, allegedly, the very middle school where this exchange took place was on lockdown because of a drug overdose. Allegedly. Now imagine the timing of that and what dysgenics and this brainwashing useful idiot apparatus actually leads to. By sweeping these problems under the rug, when the problem actually shows itself on a next consequential level, like a drug overdose, doesn't that mean that all the previous actions of the individuals involved in trying to sweep it under the rug have made a colossal error in judgment? Of course, because they believe if people don't know that this happens in their environments, in these environments where children exist, then there really is no problem. They think they can actually get away with it. This, again, is a deterioration of common sense. Bank robbers will always get caught. They might not get caught the first time, or the second time, or the third time, but they always get caught. School districts that cover up illegality might cover it up once, twice, but eventually they get caught. Because something else ends up happening that ends up being tied to, or on the periphery, certainly far worse than the original action that took place. And the concern by, of course, one of the ethical board members, albeit probably being the only ethical board member on the board, they openly said in this meeting, before this drug overdose allegedly even took place, earlier in the week, in this meeting, they openly said, what if the dope that was being exchanged had fentanyl in it? Then what? Then you have a dead kid, or you have two dead students. I'm calling them students loosely, but you get what I'm saying. You have two dead minors in a middle school. And the individual who was supposed to put all of this to an end the moment that illegality was literally sniffed out was from a female employee. Which means that individual then loses their job, their license, because why? Because they didn't do the thing that they were contractually obligated to do, not only based on their contract, but their codes of conduct for their license, which clearly states in the state of Ohio of the 9 principles of an educator, one of them specifically has to do with drug and alcohol consumption and possession. That they can't have it, that if they know of students who have it, they immediately have to get involved and do away with it and hold those individuals accountable, etc., etc. And if they don't, well then, consequences come their way as being, of course, the adult. In loco parentis, in lieu of parent, they're supposed to do what the adult is supposed to do when the parent is not around. It doesn't mean giving them a baggie to allegedly cover up the smell of said dope. And it was something like 1/4 of an ounce of weed. Again, you'll even have, and I've even seen it on this particular Facebook group, but that's local, but you'll see individuals try to make excuses for students having weed in their possession. They'll say things like, well, it's legal lots of places and it's legal in Ohio, so that's like a kid getting caught with a cigarette these days, so what does it really matter? This, again, is dysgenics. It's dysgenics on the mind of the individual who should be the morally sound adult, running from a tradition standpoint, but they're not. They're progressively minded, which causes them to lose common sense when it's all said and done, and actually make excuses for, again, a minor in possession of a drug. Big problem. But again, that was a local issue that transpired here. And, this is the cool part, school board meetings nationwide this month are going to be next flippin' level. And I'm talking next level crazy. Because you have individuals now, conservatives, thank God, who are going to be showing up to these environments and giving them absolute hell all over the nation. And it ties directly to all of these mental breakdowns because of the election. You have individual groups coming out of the woodwork. You have individuals who are going to be wearing t-shirts and all the same t-shirts. And they're all going to be showing up and they're all going to be, again, letting their voices be heard in these meetings as to how stupid these school board members are, how retarded these building administrators are who are doing what they're doing, and then anybody who's allowing these teachers to get away with what they're getting away with these public statements of delusions, which is part of this Dysgenics program. This is all going to transpire here across the nation. Trust me, I'm going to play audio on this show of those board meetings. Certainly Westerville, Ohio, and then the local one where I live. I might even tap into a few others just to give people a taste. In fact, let me bring this up locally, because this too, again, is part of the deterioration of common sense and the entire Dysgenics program. The Miami University, of course, where I live, has, as I've read from on the show before, a newspaper, the Miami Student. The Miami Student brought up the case of local high school English teacher Danielle Mann. Look at my last Substack article and you'll see all her breakdown videos. Danielle Mann is still on paid administrative leave. Big paid vacation, again, whether she gets fired or not is up to anybody's guess at this point. As far as I know, and as rumor has it, the HR director is even protecting this woman and consoling her because, well, so many people are attacking her and she's the victim in this whole thing. No, she is not the victim. She's the victimizer. And so here's the title of this Miami student article. This was actually back on November 9th, right after this happened. Parents respond to Talawanda teacher placed on leave. There are 2 parents in this article who respond to this situation, and both of them side with Danielle Mann. Here's what one of them says. It says, in the video, Mann said that she challenges any man who voted Democrat in the 2024 election to identify themselves by wearing blue bracelets or blue safety pins and posting their stories on social media where they live, so women could identify them as safe spaces, quote unquote. Rice, one of these individuals, who's apparently a male Miami University professor, said that he saw the video on Facebook and then on X where it had appeared and apparently was reposted again by the account Libs of TikTok, an account that posts right-wing content, so the Miami student says, and regularly posts about teachers making political statements. Rice said he worries that Mann may be harassed by people, both in and out of the Oxford community. The Libs of TikTok post has received 2.8 million. Of course, it's more than that now. And then he went on to say, she's probably going to get death threats from this. So that's his concern. His concern is that bad things are going to happen to Danielle Mann and people are going to attack her. His concern is not children in or around her presence, given all of the political rhetoric that she has spewed on endless people in the past, which has gone unchecked, and then, of course, most recently. That's not his concern. His concern is someone who is like-minded, who he agrees with politically. That's his only concern. My question, of course, is, what would happen if Danielle Mann were having sex with a minor? Then what? Would that be his concern? Or would it be his concern to rationalize it and say, well, she was lonely, you need to leave her alone, maybe, this is just her way of, venting some frustration, and she's broken and you need to leave her alone and not make fun of her because now she's receiving death threats for raping a child. Again, it's a hypothetical situation I just made up, but I hope you understand my point. These people stick with each other no matter what. Another woman went on here, a Tanya Richards, a Talawanda graduate and a parent of a current student, well, that's too bad, said she also fears that for Mann's safety, she said. She said this was not the first time that Mann's TikToks had been reposted on Facebook. However, this is the first time that a video has gained traction. Oh, okay. So because it's more concerning based on her statements of division and provoking violence, and because it's gained traction, that's somehow a problem. It says Richard also said that Mann had been doxxed before. Who cares? Everybody can look up everybody's address by name on the internet. That's not difficult to do. It says Rice and Richards both said that they viewed Mann's videos as a way for her to express her grief. Quote, she looked like someone who was just quite sad and shaken about the election, said Rice. And then it goes on to basically again say that Rice and Mann ran the Gay-Straight Alliance at Talawanda High School and added that he is concerned about what might happen to the group if Mann does not return to the school because Mann was an advocate for the Gay-Straight Alliance group at Talawanda High School. Who cares? Who cares about your degenerate program? Well, as luck would have it, the engineers of the Dysgenics program would want this to happen. They would want Danielle Mann to return to that environment to continue the unspoken and spoken demoralization of every individual group and the environment as a whole, without holding anybody accountable really, to keep her around for another year or so that she can cash in on her pension. Well, I've already filed a formal complaint with the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, and I'm sure more people have just beyond myself, regarding the license status of Danielle Mann. she should lose it immediately. See, everybody has a boss. And what's fun about this is that educators who overstep their contractual obligations and actually break their contractual obligations and break their codes of conduct, they actually have at least 3 bosses. And they forget this with regularity. The building principal is their boss, and certainly a reference to their district boss, which is, of course, the Human Resources Department, another boss, and the superintendent, another boss. And then the school board will blindly, unless they're friends with them, which we know that they are, they will accept or deny their resignation or their immediate firing. But then there's another boss called the state. And the state, of course, holds their teaching license and administrative license in the palm of their hand. And if they violate their codes of conduct, then citizens have the right to contact the Ohio Department of Education and most state departments of education and file a formal complaint based on the verbiage inside of the state codes of conduct for educators, and then the actual incident that actually transpired. Doesn't help that all of this was on video. Doesn't help that there's 3 videos out there of her being completely irrational and totally unhinged and divisive, even before the election even took place. So anybody, again, coming to her defense is the useful idiot in this entire scheme. Now there was this, and I have some audio to play, and you're going to hear this rationalization also to some extent, but thank God for these parents, because these individuals actually have their head on straight by and large. Now again, it was selective as to who this news outlet picked, but God bless them for picking these people. You heard me in the last episode bring up the case of Olentangy Local School District's high school principal, the Orange High School principal, Monica Asher, and the memo that she pushed out to all the employees. I don't know how I can go on acting like this election didn't just happen. I know that everybody's divided and this is difficult for all of us, including me. Blah, 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 blah. And everybody, of course, knows she's a leftist because you kind of have to be. Point being, that went viral, so to speak. That was all over libs of TikTok. That was lots of different places. She has now been placed on paid administrative leave. Now here's the audio I want to play. This is the local Channel 4 news outlet, NBC4, and they interviewed 3 parents. Their take is rather good. It's a common sense take. In fact, the Asian guy is amazing. He's basically just like, politics have no place in education for future generation. Again, I love this guy. This guy is anti-Dysgenics. He gets it. Tradition, family, values, genetics. Let's keep the degeneracy and the political infiltration out of all of this. He's 100% right. And the 2 women that this female news correspondent interviews, they're also right too. But he's a little more direct, and I enjoy that. So give this audio a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
We are hearing reaction from community members today about the Olentangy Orange High School principal who was placed on administrative leave.
This comes just days after Principal Monica Asher issued a statement in a newsletter to staff talking about recent election results. NBC4's Delaney Ruth is live in Lewis Center. Delaney, what are people there saying?
Well, Jennifer, Jared, I spent the day here in Lewis Center asking people what they think about a principal being put on administrative leave for commenting on politics to her colleagues. Many of them tell me they believe education and politics should be kept completely separate. Monica Asher has been principal at Olentangy Orange since 2022. On Sunday, she sent a newsletter out to Orange High School staff saying in part, "I can't write a message that pretends like the election didn't happen, especially when so many of you are struggling with how to move forward." She was placed on administrative leave on Thursday.
A little bit shocked that we're kind of sending our opinion out to others. I think everybody is kind of in a different spot right now and different feelings.
Most people I spoke with today agree that a principal's political opinions should not be shared in the school setting.
Politics is politics. Education different than politics.
Keep it separate.
That's right. So just, support our future.
There's kind of a boundary that you have, at that time. And I don't think necessarily sending that out for everybody to see. I think that is a little much.
Another parent I talked to doesn't have kids at Olentangy schools, but she says she would not want her child's principal to send that newsletter to colleagues, especially in today's political climate.
My take on it is just everybody has their own opinions nowadays, and we just should keep our comments to ourselves, maybe. So not in an office, not at a school. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. We've seen in the past that school administrators placed on leave sometimes end up resigning or are let go. Olentangy district parents I spoke with say they don't necessarily agree with Asher's actions, but aren't sure whether she should lose her job over it.
Education is our future. Kids are our future. So we as an adult, we have to support our future, right? But not important for the politics.
A conversation definitely needs to be had. I think one thing was very extreme. I don't know if responding in a very extreme manner is the way to go as well.
Well, an Olentangy spokesperson did tell us that she could not confirm whether Asher was placed on administrative leave because of this newsletter. The district said they did not have any further comment at this time because this is an ongoing investigation. Local for you in Lewis Center, I'm Delaney Ruth, NBC4.
She has been placed on paid administrative leave. That is official. Either way, I nominate the Asian guy to be the principal of that school building. He gets my nomination. Again, certified or not, who cares? Hire the guy. He apparently has his head on straighter. Politics, stay out. Future of America. Yeah. Yes. This is a no-brainer, and you cut her loose. Period. The job, I've brought this up so many times, the job of a building administrator is only as hard as they make it. And the one thing you do not do is create a divisive environment. That means don't play games, don't get political. Make sure that students aren't being touched by teachers, and that's about all you have to do. That's it. Keep people from killing each other, and don't do anything that lowers the intellect or demeans individuals in any situation, or could even bring about the chance for individuals to embarrass themselves or demean one another or divide one another. But they don't do that. The entire environment loves competition. They love it among students. They love division among students. They love it among their staff members. That's why they introduced all of the Dysgenics rainbow flag nonsense and the DEI programs and everything else. All of this is a part of that environment. And then when one of them, again, clearly an administrator who's never read their codes of conduct nor their own contract, doesn't know that the very first parameter of those 9 principles of their codes of conduct is conduct on becoming an educator or an administrator. And then that means don't create a divisive environment. But when they do all of those things and then they themselves actually participate and push themselves to the front of that divisive line and they get caught, they're surprised. This is the brainwashing of progressivism. This is the brainwashing that the Jewish lobby has caused. But they, of course, don't know this because they're not taught this. When they are learning to be school teachers and building administrators, they're not exposed to any of this. That, too, is a part of the Dysgenics program. That's why it's all tied together here. Let me bring you 2 more examples from an education standpoint. Last week, a federal judge ruled in Michigan regarding the Ethan Crumbley shooting of 4 students and the wounding of others, that the individuals who were impacted by that were entitled to millions of dollars. something like 50 some odd million dollars in total. I think it was like 55 million if I'm not mistaken. Either way, they openly also stated that the Oxford Community Schools are facing a $5 million windfall. Apparently every year here moving forward over the next number of years. So this too is a part of the Dysgenics program. Part of the Dysgenics program, as I said earlier, is not having common sense and not being preventative. And of course, pacifying everybody to the point where they make excuses for behavior that they're supposed to be holding individuals accountable for. And it all falls back on that school counselor and that school enforcer, what would you call it? The administrative enforcer. His name has slipped my mind, but those two individuals were in possession of Ethan Crumbley's backpack when there was a loaded gun in his backpack. And none of them checked his backpack when it was clearly their policy to do so. Not checking the backpack, something that specific, is a part of this Dysgenics program because look where it leads. You give the backpack back to Ethan Crumbley, he goes back to class, all of that being part of the excuse making, we're here for you, Ethan, and all that other bullshit, and then he ends up killing people. They weren't preventative from the start, they didn't do what their policy told them to do, people ended up dead. And now the school's broke, the district is broke, as they should be, because no one should be going there. And now you have parents receiving money as a result of the school not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. This is all a part of the Dysgenics program. There's also this. Second story, this is from Campus Reform. University of Maryland to offer fat studies course about the intersection of blackness and fatness, quote unquote. It says the course examines fatness as an area of human difference, subject to privilege and discrimination, that intersects the other systems of oppression based on gender, race, class, sexual orientation, and ability. The course is being offered by a professor whose teaching methods seek to, quote, blur the boundaries between the academy, art, and activism, unquote. Dysgenics. That's exactly what this is. It's offered through the Harriet Tubman Department of Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. I don't think I need to add any more here. All of this is under the realm of Dysgenics, which is designed to get people to die, to kill one another, kill themselves, either directly or progressively over the course of time. And you have to kill the mind also. It's not just about killing the body and making excuses as to why individuals kill themselves slowly and progressively or even directly, but you have to wear away at their common sense. You have to normalize the insanity as much as humanly possible. Kamala's going to win. Kamala's going to win. Kamala has a chance. She has a chance. We knew she didn't. We knew it was voter fraud in 2020. They didn't. We knew Hillary Clinton wasn't going to win in 2016. There's no way she could. She has a 98% chance of winning, Sean. Shut your face. And then you see all of the meltdowns time and time and time again. Again, it's no different than a doctor prescribing a drug to an individual who is ill without diagnosing what it is that's making them ill. What's the thing that they're doing that's making them sick? And then, of course, telling them they might want to stop doing said thing that's making them sick, because then they'll get better. The Dysgenics program doesn't want that. It doesn't want people to get better. It wants to kill people. That's the entire agenda. That's the whole program. Case in point now, jab-related stuff. This was from signsofthetimes.com. COVID vaccines pose a 112,000 greater risk of brain clots, strokes, than flu shots. Flu shots do bad enough. That's a part of the Dysgenics program also. But again, clearly the COVID bioweapon is having its intended purpose inflicted on the people who took them and, of course, the individuals who are around the people who took them. COVID vaccines, it says, again, post a 112,000 greater risk of brain clots, it says, and strokes than flu vaccines, and a 20,700% greater risk of those symptoms than all other vaccines combined, according to peer-reviewed study that calls for a global moratorium on the vaccines. Yes, this is the thing that has to happen here. Also, there was this particular post on greatawakening.win having to do with child experiments. This is specifically quotations from RFK Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. Dysgenics, ladies and gentlemen. Let me read some of these quotes. The first one, quote, in 2004, investigative journalist Liam Sheff chronicled Dr. Fauci's secretive experiments on hundreds of HIV-positive foster children in Incantation Children's Center, or ICC, in New York City, and numerous sister facilities in New York and 6 other states between 1988 and 2002. Those experiments were the core of Dr. Fauci's career-defining effort to develop a second generation of profitable AIDS drugs as an encore to AZT, unquote. Now again, HIV doesn't exist. There's no such thing. There are compromised immune systems, and then there's a faulty HIV test, to where if a person takes it, and they test positive, well then they think, by default, without thinking, that they have HIV, when really they probably just have a weakened immune system. So how do you improve your immune system? Stop poisoning yourself, exercise, eat right, drink the right things. This is how you fix this. But you need a lie to perpetuate more lies, and those lies have to be believed. Certainly the first lie. Here's the second quote. Alliance for Human Research projections investigation revealed that many of the children NIAID subjected to Dr. Fauci's experiments were perfectly healthy and may not even have been HIV infected. Well, of course they weren't. HIV doesn't exist. It goes on, next quote, Schaef's Chronicle suggests that Dr. Fauci and his principal investigators purposefully took advantage of Incarnation Children's Center's status as a non-medical facility. It says the PIs had free rein to engage in conduct that experienced professional nurses and doctors would have flagged as unethical and illegal, unquote. The next quote, when children declined to take the toxic drugs, NIAID and its pharma partners arranged to surgically implant feeding tubes in their bellies to force obedience. The next quote, when Mimi started at ICC, the tubes were used infrequently. And then it says, quote, but when the kids got older, a lot of them started to refuse the medication, she recalled. Quote, then they started coming in with the tubes more and more. Kids who refused too much or threw up too much, they'd get a tube. First it was through the nose, then it was more and more through the stomach. You'd see a certain child refusing over and over, and one day they'd come back from the hospital from surgery, and they had a tube coming right out of their stomach. If you asked why, the doctor said it was for compliance, quote unquote, the regimen. Got to keep up the regimen, said Mimi. Those were the rules, unquote. It says Mimi described, whoever this Mimi person is, describes how children suffered and how some died. One girl, a 6-year-old Cheyenne, she came in for adherence. She was the most delicate little flower, beautiful, polite, full of life. Her family never gave her meds, so Administration for Children's Services brought her to ICC. She came in and started the meds, and it was 3 months, maybe 3 months, and she had a stroke. She could not see. She was this normal girl, singing, jumping, playing. Then poof, stroked out, blind. We were freaked out. Then in a few months, she was gone, dead. Here's the last quote. Between 1985 and 2005, NIAID and its pharma partners conscripted at least 532 infants and children from foster care in New York City as human subjects for clinical trials testing NIAID's experimental AIDS drugs and vaccines. 80 of the 532 students who participated in the clinical trials or observational studies died while in foster care. 25 of the children died while enrolled in a medication trial. Unquote. Again, this is the Dysgenics program. You have to attack multiple people of multiple generations and multiple ages to carry out this program. And you need the useful idiots. And again, those useful idiots, of course, balance on this tightrope of what's ethical and what's not, and in many times they just jump right off of the rope on the side of unethical behavior. Just like, of course, Anthony Fauci. But he might actually believe some of this. I mean, he might be that stupid that he believes that HIV is real, that these drugs that he's created actually work, and that if something goes wrong, well, it's not his fault. That's the useful idiot mentality. But he's funded. And who is he funded by? He's funded by the bankers, the Jewish moneylenders, the corporations, and then his messages are promoted and pushed out by the media, who is, of course, funded by the exact same people. It's all cyclical. It's unfortunately a never-ending apparatus that exists here, but it is something that can stop. The law can stop this. Destroying these three-letter agencies and these medical institutions and these lies can stop this. But what won't stop it, unfortunately, is when individuals continue to perpetuate lies and the lie of virology. As long as that continues to be perpetuated and people continue to believe these fairy tales, nothing is going to get better. Certainly among the individuals, I should say, who have already participated in all of this. They've participated willfully and unwillfully in this Dysgenics program. That wheel is going to keep spinning unless it hits some major speed bumps and people start pulling the spokes out of that wheel. Until that happens, it's going to keep rolling on down the hill. So, again, we have a responsibility to squash these lies and these half-truths as much as humanly possible. People like, again, Peter McCullough. Take him for example. He's a part of this Dysgenics program, whether he knows it or not. He, again, is part of the useful idiot category within that Dysgenics program. He thinks there are variants for a virus that doesn't exist. There are no variants. There is no virus. There is poison that people put in their bodies, and then it has a negative effect. And because, as I've said before, it has different symptoms and different negative effects on different people, that's what he perceives to be a variant. There are no variants. But even these useful idiots who appear to be on the right side of history, they're even on the wrong side. And they all circle the wagons too, just like everybody else. And if you question them, certainly publicly, they get very defensive. Because again, they think that they have a lot to lose. When in fact, they have everything to gain. And that's the sad part about all of this. They have everything to gain. They could gain more positive influence in endless positive directions if they just stop believing all of these lies. But again, they're license holders, and their licenses are contingent on them continuing to believe the lies because who controls those licenses? The same Jewish lobby and the same medical industries that are funded by the Jewish lobby. That's the cycle of it. And it wraps these people up and it traps them. So that's Dysgenics, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's not eugenics. It's not individuals living healthy lifestyles and trying to maintain their genes and their family tree and keep things, again, within their own family and within their own kind to progress in a positive direction and actually strengthen their genes. It's the exact opposite. So eugenics is not a bad word. The bad word that you're not hearing anybody use is dysgenics. Now that I've planted that seed, hopefully it takes root within the listeners of this show, and the next time you hear someone talking about eugenics or they say eugenics, understand they probably don't know what they're talking about. But as I've said before, there's an extreme end of eugenics which leads into dysgenics, which is where individuals actually believe that if a person takes a bunch of supplements or takes things to the extreme, that somehow they will improve their genetics. That's not true either. That leans right into dysgenics. So that's the slippery slope between the two. But again, once you kick it into dysgenics, it becomes, like I said earlier, a cyclical process that's very hard to break. The truth can break it, but it takes a lot of people in the right positions to tell the truth and to break down the liars. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. I'll put that chart and that Venn diagram of dysgenics and the education system and the brainwashing that has taken place, again, specifically within the education system and certainly throughout society, in the description below if you're interested in downloading that for your own records. It's also, of course, on my X and Gab page. With that said, again, have a great week, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.